Spanberger campaign. I want to thank you very, very much for coming out and spending your evening with us tonight to help celebrate and move forward on a historic congressional campaign. I say historic because when Abigail wins, it will be the first time in 55 years that a Democrat has sat in the seat in Virginia 7. I, for one, am thrilled to see that happen. And we also, as a very special guest tonight, have Tom Perriello. He's been gracious enough to come say a few words in support of the campaign, and we're thrilled to have him as well. So without further ado, I will hand the mic to him.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for supporting this amazing candidate. She is the star, so I'm not going to say much tonight, but I just want to reinforce how important this race is. This is the kind of race we have to win in order to not just flip this seat, but to flip the House of Representatives this fall. And the stakes could not be higher. I think if we don't get to a majority, I think we could see an end to investigations. We could see a continuation of dehumanizing kinds of policies that are separating families and pulling our communities apart. And if we do get to a majority, it's the first step towards restoring the principles and the values of an inclusive Virginia and inclusive America. And all of that is resting on Abigail. So no pressure. But what's awesome, and the reason that we're seeing this wave across the country, is because this isn't a typical year, because we don't have typical candidates. We have exceptional candidates, right? There's so many reasons to care about this race, but the nice thing is, the most important is that Abigail is going to be an amazing member of Congress. She has dedicated her life to public service. She's dedicated her life to making our community safer, making our country safer. She's brilliant, she's bold, she's fearless, she's uncorruptible. She is someone who we know is going to go up and speak for all of us, not just for the powerful interests. She's going to be thinking 10 years ahead on the challenges that we face, whether it's counterterrorism and cyber, or the jobs of the future, or how we bring people together across these lines that have been so divided. So I just want to say how excited I am, how honored I am. We've gotten to know each other a little bit. We marched together in the March for Our Lives, which also was one of those moments here in Richmond where we realized that it is young people that are leading the way right now. And we need to make sure with our phone calls and our door knocks and everything else that we are getting that message to everyone else. The last thing I just want to say is how winnable this race is, okay? Now, I want to put it in perspective. When I won my race in 2008, at this point in the campaign, I was 32% behind in the polls. And we had definitely not earned the toss-up status that she has. So she is way ahead of that campaign that won by 700 votes. So we're looking for a landslide here in the Virginia 7. We not only taught all of Virginia last year, we taught the whole country that seats are winnable that nobody thought was winnable before. We saw that with people like Skylar and Dawn and Deborah and others, some of whom I think are here tonight. And we are going to show that in Virginia. We're going to show it in the 10th and the 7th and the 2nd and the 5th and beyond. And it's going to be part of a beautiful blue wave that helps restore those values. But first and foremost, I just want to say how honored I am to support a friend, someone who is a great patriot and a great Virginia, and your next Congresswoman, Abigail Spanberger.
So I definitely need to take Tom with me everywhere. Thank you so much for that fantastic introduction. And thank you so much to David and to Vagabond for hosting this event. Thank you to everyone who came out tonight. We don't normally have a situation where the lights are such that I can't see the people, so this is very different for me. My name is Abigail Spanberger, and I'm the Democratic nominee running in Virginia's 7th Congressional District. And it is through our campaign and our hard work that I intend to unseat our incumbent, Congressman Dave Brat.
Oh, yeah.
And I am running for Congress for a very simple reason. I believe that we need legislators in Washington who are working every single day to create legislation that will make the lives of their constituents better, that will create opportunities within our communities, and that are responsive to the needs and challenges facing people across our districts and our country. And I want to be a part of a sea change, pun intended with the blue wave, a sea change of change in Washington, where we're changing the conversation, we're changing the focus, and we're walking away from some of the hyper-partisanship, some of the ideologically driven motivations that exist currently in Washington, and we are returning to a place where we can have conversations about what challenges impact the people in the 7th District, what challenges impact people across this country, and how it is that we can be responsive to the needs of our fellow citizens. And that, to me, is what service is. That, to me, is what every person who is elected to represent their community should be focused on. And I do have a background in service. I began my career as a federal agent. I worked money laundering and drug trafficking cases, and from there I became a CIA officer. I worked based in DC for a time, then I was based overseas and ultimately on the West Coast. And as a CIA officer, I was a case officer. I handled cases where I was collecting the vital intelligence that allowed for us to keep our country safe from terrorist threat, that also provided vital information to our policymakers, our president, our military, and our diplomats, so that they could make the most informed decision possible about issues of national security. And in 2014, we moved back to Virginia. Bear with me, because some of you have heard this story. We were living on the West Coast, and we were bidding on where we might go next, and my husband and I were talking with our oldest daughter about, do we want to go to Berlin, Germany, or Nairobi, Kenya, or should we bid on San Jose, Costa Rica? And our daughter said, what about Virginia? And I said, how about Nairobi? And we had dear friends who were living in Nairobi at the time. We used to Skype with them. They had a monkey in their backyard. I thought that would be convincing, but evidently their grandparents have greater pull than that. So 2014, that conversation really started me thinking, and it started me thinking about what it is that I wanted. And while I had pursued a career of public service because of the phenomenal example that my father had set for me as a public servant and as a federal employee, I also reflected on the example that my mother had set as a nurse and as someone who was really involved in the community. And so we decided that I would leave my career with CIA, that we would move back to Virginia, and that I would begin a career in the private sector, and then focus on the community. So pivot away from public service to community service. And I became a Girl Scout leader and advocate with Moms Demand Action, and increasingly active in the Democratic Party. And it was the 2016 election where we saw this increasing divisive rhetoric that really drove me to consider whether or not I would run for office. And it was ultimately the day of the House Health Care Bill vote that I decided that I definitively would, because the idea that we would have a Congress that would make such a vote when people across this country were begging them not to. People across this country were telling personal stories of how it is that they would be impacted, the fears that they had related to potentially losing pre-existing conditions protections, the fears that they had related to potentially going bankrupt if they were to lose their health insurance, that none of that mattered, because it was the ideology of repealing that bill that mattered most. The Affordable Care Act. And so for me, that was the day when I decided that we need more people in Washington who are dedicated to making informed and data-driven decisions about what are the needs of the people across this country. And that was the day that I decided that Congress was no longer adhering to that responsibility that I believed that they had. And so that was the day that I decided definitively that I would launch this campaign. We started the campaign in July. It's been over a year. We are closing in on Election Day. And I will tell you this. I love meeting people across this district. We are a district of 10 counties. We go from Culpeper to Henrico to Chesterfield to Nottoway. It's a long, skinny district. We have populations across this district with very diverse concerns and very diverse needs. And it has been an incredible honor to get to meet so many people and hear their personal stories and understand what it is that they want in their representative and what it is that they need. And whether they agree with me on everything or not is not even the focal point of the conversation. The focal point of the conversation is for me to understand what it is that they need. Because if someone's going to Washington to represent this community, I need to understand what their needs are, and I need to be responsive to those needs. This race has moved from a safe, strong Republican district to a toss-up district. There was a great piece in the New York Times today about the race. But it wasn't a piece about me. It was a piece about the race, and it was a piece about the people who are standing shoulder to shoulder and at times behind me, around me, in front of me, being a part of our effort here in the next door in the 7th District to flip this seat. And because it is so important to people across this district, and there are people who are motivated and engaging every single day on behalf of this campaign, and that's what that article's about. And if you read that article, it's clear from the motivation and the excitement that exists with campaign volunteers, they are the reason why we will win this race. And a room full of people on a Thursday night, and this is not our first event of the week, also speaks to why it is that we're going to win this race. And I want to just speak to what Tom said. It's not just about flipping a seat. It's about what we were able to achieve. We have Schuyler Van Valkenburg here. I don't think we have any other members of the House of Delegates, but you know, he won a seat that was considered unwinnable. Deborah won a seat that was considered unwinnable, as did John, and Larry Barnett's going to do it next time. If he wants to. Okay, but we want him to. But it's about what they were able to achieve. It was about the change, Medicaid expansion, changing the felony larceny threshold, the change that they were able to create. And so while I want to flip this seat for a variety of reasons, it's about what I want to do in Washington. And in Washington, I want to ensure that we are working towards making our community safer and stronger and better for everyone. And we are ensuring that people have affordable, quality health care, and that our public schools are places of learning and opportunity that create a place where kids can pass through and leave and go on to college if that's what's right for them, go on to apprenticeship programs if that's what's right for them, or the military, or directly into the job force, and a job that will pay enough so that they can put food on their table and live a good life and provide for their families. And I want to ensure that we are working to protect our natural resources, because across the 7th District, we have farmers who depend on the health of the land. We have people who just enjoy hiking, who depend on the healthy environmental protections that are so necessary to our communities. And overall, I want to advocate for more decency and more civility in Washington. I want to talk to people with whom I disagree, because I'll tell you what, even though we're going to win this seat, I'm not going to get the vote of everyone who lives here. And I have come to terms with that. But it's about representing everyone, and that starts with being able to have hard conversation, that starts with being able to listen, and that starts with being accountable. And that's why we've been spending so much time across this district, meeting with people, answering questions, talking about issues, because ultimately when I go to Washington, when I advocate for things that are important to people back in this district, I want to be doing so in a way where I am making people proud, I am accountable, and I'm truly representing the people of the 7th District. So thank you all for being here tonight. I truly appreciate it. Anyone who's interested in volunteering, we have sign-up sheets out there. To everyone who's spending their time with us, I truly appreciate it. You know, this race will be won because of the active engagement of people across the 7th District and our friendly neighbors in the 4th. So thank you.
So now you know why the first time I met and listened to her, I was completely won over. And I cannot echo more loudly, this race will be won on the ground. It is our job, everybody in this room, to get out and phone bank and send emails And whatever we can do, knock on doors, get out there and spread the word, because every single vote counts, like we saw in the Ohio 12th, as close as that is. And how many elections have we seen in the past 2 cycles where people said, gosh, I really should have gone out and voted. It looks like it would have mattered. So please, get out and help. It's the sprint to the finish, and we can do this, and we will do this. Thank you.